Ophilia had a strong desire to pass away peacefully, without experiencing any pain. She longed to be free from the burden of pain, but her parents and others around her urged her not to express such thoughts. They asked her to be patient and stay a little longer. They even went as far as calling her selfish. The girl sitting next to her would never utter those words to her, right? The lady wouldn't get angry because of her friend's lack of understanding, would she? No, she wouldn't get angry. Ophilia decided to ask the lady what she would do if she requested to be put in a grave. The lady responded that she would ask Ophilia to wait until she found a way that would cause her the least amount of pain. It was true. However, Ophilia knew that if she pursued this path, she would be confined and others would curse her. But the lady meant more to her than anything else. Ophilia expressed that even if everyone else forgot about her, the lady should always remember her and never forget to bring flowers to her grave every spring. She also asked the lady not to find a new close friend after she was gone. When Ophilia mentioned that she didn't want to die, a sad expression appeared on the girl's face. Ophilia was the only daughter of the Marquis of Windows, a gentle noble with a comfortable life and abundant wealth. Despite her pale face, Ophilia always had a radiant smile when she was with those she loved. Ophilia had a challenging personality, but everyone adored her. The dark-haired girl had been brought from a distant place to be her constant companion. She was a friend, family, and toy to Ophilia. At first, Ophilia teased her and felt jealous of her healthy body, but she soon realized that the girl was just as sick as she was. If the lady were to be expelled from the Marquis house, she would have to return to a life of hardship and poverty. Therefore, she had to do everything in her power to stay close to Ophilia. She became her friend, her family, and her entire world. In the end, it was nothing extraordinary. The lady vaguely remembered the details of Ophilia's fate from a past life. After all, this world was just a game. The lady knew that regardless of the choices made, Ophilia always met a tragic end in the game. No male lead could save her. In the end, they find themselves smitten with the Baron's daughter, who bears a striking resemblance to Ophilia. Despite their previous yearning and longing for Ophilia, in a typical conclusion, they completely forget about her and wholeheartedly embrace their love for the Baron's daughter, the first love of a dying flower. It's like a splinter in their hearts. What a ridiculous story. The girl asked Ophilia if she would die with her. If she was scared, even if she spent her whole life, she wouldn't be able to have even a crumb of what Ophilia had. But the young lady loved her sincerely, not as a joke. Ophilia didn't want that though, and the lady couldn't understand why. Ophilia explained that it's a pity, but she asked the lady to live her life to the fullest instead. The protagonist must dress well, travel, eat well, ride a horse, and love, but if she ends up with an idiot, Ophilia warned that she would come out of her grave. The lady responded that she didn't think she could love someone like that, as she was afraid. Ophilia continued, stating that her wedding dress is essential and she likes the idea of having many little flowers on the hem. However, the lady thought it was nonsense. She believed that a dress like that wouldn't look good on someone with a simple face like hers. But the lady responded that she knows. Ophilia told her to live happily, leaving the lady wondering what happiness truly means. She couldn't find an answer. Ophilia sadly passed away in the last days of spring. One night, she insisted on looking at the flowers and asked for the window to be opened. A slight cold turned into a fever, and despite the care, the fever only worsened. Ophilia constantly fainted, and after a month of fighting the disease, she died. While the lady was placing flowers on her friend's body, she overheard people whispering about how heartless she was for not shedding a single tear. She realized that most people were more interested in the Marquis and the Marchioness. Only a few present truly knew Ophilia personally, and some even openly flirted with her. A guy approached the lady and asked if she found it all useless, not caring whether she lived or died. Continues walking on the earth. It seems that God loves these jokes. She responded that the young man was right. The young man became angry and stated that even now she doesn't care. He asked what would Ophilia think. She turned to him, and told him that she knew Ophilia much better than him. She knows he feels miserable, but she doesn't care. Edmund Gloucester, the eldest son of Count Gloucester family. He's one who will get what he wants no matter what. A vicious hyena who is dangerous to make your enemy. In the game, the lady remembered one of the bad endings, in which the Baron's daughter was locked up by this man. If it was anything related to Ophilia, he turned impatient and reckless. He even has a room filled with Ophilia's stuff. In the sad ending, you can learn some secrets about his roots and his broken family. So it's possible to understand why Edmund became like this, but Emily did not remember anything. At that moment another guy came in and said that Emilia was right. After all, the person who knew Ophilia the best was Emilia. Cassio Bramendorf speaks like a gentleman, but in reality, he has the worst personality, because he thinks of people as things. Emilia was 100% sure that the gentleman had intervened in the conversation not to help her, but simply to make fun of Edmund. He didn't like Emilia either. Cassio exclaimed it was ashamed to see him press his feelings on the unfortunate Emilia. Edmund exclaims the sun must be rising in the west, since he's defending her. Emilia thought even if he's defending her, those who love Opilia to the point of madness cannot stand her. The reason why Emilia was not sad at the funeral. She knew that Opilia was destined to die and she was destined to take her place. But Emilia replied to the boys that she would not take over Opilia's title. She would never become a member of the Marquis of Windows's family. They didn't understand what she talking about. The girl replied that she did not know very well who would take the position. Raritas Hope is the second son of the family. He has outstanding abilities and good character and is a close relative of the Marquis of Windows. If Opilia were well, this is the man who would be her fiancé and later son-in-law of the Marquis. And he is also the man who last attacked these two, who chased Ophelia's love. Emilia commented that the Marquis wife would probably adopt Raritas, as he's a promising gentleman, with a good pedigree. He's the right man to be the heir of the Marquis. They asked what the protagonist was talking about. They are all quite intelligent, but after Ophelia's died, they've become dull. In the past, Opilia said they were idiots, since they are only attracted by the idea of having a tragic love story with a girl who is about to die. Emilia had only gone to the Marquis family because she needed a friend, but now she had to leave. Cassio asked the Emilia if she was really going to leave the mansion. Emilia replied that they would have many worries when the funeral was over, so she had to leave. While the Marquis wife couldn't stop crying and has already fainted several times, and the Marquis who has lost his only daughter is faced with pressure from many places heirs, so while the others aren't paying attention to her, she just needs to get away, and the men who treat her like a fly clinging to Opilia will also breathe a sigh of relief. But why are these two so surprised? Edmund asked if she wouldn't live comfortably as a Marquis. Emilia responded that she would not stay. Opilia was no longer alive, so there was no reason for her to remain in the care of the Marquis. Cassio questioned if she was going to be the adopted daughter of the Marquis. Emilia said that Marquis wife only said that to her daughter to please her. Emilia had enough money to live alone and not starve. Without Emilia there will be someone to fill the empty seat, the Baron's daughter. She looks like Opilia, except that she will appear a little later in the game. Originally Emilia had to suffer the fate of a pathetic bug trampled by 3 men in the game, because she was jealous, but the protagonist did not follow that path. But she became friends with Opilia. She told the men that if they had nothing more to say she would leave, and then Cassius asked if she liked Raritas. She remembered peeping in the sick Opilia, then holding Raritas' hand by the doorway. She stopped and asked what they were talking about. Raritas would be Ophilia's husband and the successor of the Marquis. Raritas is the only one of the 3 who has been polite to her. Emilia said that it didn't matter at all if she had feelings for him or not. It wouldn't be inappropriate if she did. The conversation came to an end. In the next scene the protagonist asked Opilia not to eat the flowers, but she said that she was the one who told her that flower is edible among the flowers. Opilia tells her pour cold water on Cassio. Emilia asked why did she hate him that much. But Opilia simply didn't like his eyes, especially when Cassio looked at her close friend. Emilia stated that maybe he was jealous that she and Opilia were so close. How selfish. Opilia liked Emilia. She just wanted to spend more time with her friend. She fell asleep after talking to those two. In the past she would sleep and the loneliness would go away. She wonders why she's in a cold sweat. No wonder her throat was dry. To be honest, she didn't hate those 3 so much after all. She only had Opilia, and the same for her. When Emilia entered the kitchen, a gentleman was sitting there. They hadn't seen each other for a long time. However, he was late for the funeral. Raritas replied that he had come as fast as he could. As soon as he crossed the threshold, the Marquis wife fainted, so he was delayed. Emilia responded that fortunately, he was still nearby. Also that the Marquis wife trusted him as her own son. Raritas responded that she was also a precious daughter to her. She responded looking at her dead daughter's best friend would only make her feel worse. The original and the fake may be similar, but they are still different. She could never replace Opilia, and in reality, Raritas was a relative closer to the Marquis, but except for that, the degree of kinship did not matter. It had been so uncomfortable before Ophelia's death, but now it felt even more vivid. The lady should definitely leave the mansion, before Raritas became the heir. But then the thought crossed his mind. How is the girl? Specifically, what's wrong with her? She questioned what he was talking about. Emilia felt like the world was collapsing, nor did she have any desire to harm herself in any way. Anyone who had witnessed the Marquis's daughter's suffering during her illness knew that the beautiful and fragile lady wouldn't live for much longer. Every day, Emilia remembered her friend and knew that the day of end would eventually come. The lady was no longer in pain and her face was beautiful, as serene as if she had just fallen asleep. Emilia didn't feel any pain and she didn't want to cry. The only thing that remained in Emilia was emptiness, as if someone had left a hole in her chest, like allowing the wind to blow through. With every breath she feels empty. After this thought, Rerdis advised Emilia not to push herself too hard. She notices his soft and affectionate tone. Such details made this guy even more complex. A maid approached Emilia and asked what she was doing. She stated she was organizing some things, putting everything in order. The maid assumed she's changing rooms. Actually, she was running away. The maid exclaimed she would take a look and help with things. She noticed a gift from the late Opilia, and mentioned that Emilia forgot her gift, the ribbon. Emilia decided to give it to the maid, but it was a gift from Opilia, replied the maid. Emilia replied that she would keep the one that was her favorite color. So Emilia, Opilia, and the servants would all be tied. Emilia smiled. The maid was surprised. She would feel better if Emilia cried. She asked if she was saying the same thing as everyone else, but that's not what she meant. The maid served her years. Even if Emilia doesn't cry, it's still understandable that she's having a tough time. After that, Emilia suddenly hugged her. The maid started to cry and Emilia just comforted her. She sat there crying and lamenting. What should they do? Mistress, Opilia, she was so young, it hurts so much, and she was always so close to her, says the maid. That was a good point. When Emilia asked if they could die together, she sincerely asked, feeling it would be better. The maid stopped crying and exclaims it was a good thing Emilia was still there. The coachman asked if all these things belonged to her. That's right, she told the Marquis, but he's not in the spirits to say anything, at the moment. Emilia lingered a little at the carriage door, and then the coachman asked her if she was waiting for someone to say goodbye. Of course not. What was she thinking? The woman was waiting for someone to appear, grab her, and take her back to the mansion, begging her to stay. There is nothing there that belongs to her. Everything belonged to her beautiful friend, therefore, no one would come. No matter how painful it was to realize, they were now on their way. In the next scene, a young man stated that she could make a lot of money if she acted special. Even thought Emilia was not a striking beauty. Her elegance was amazing. The guy didn't ask for more coffee, but kept talking nonsense. Emilia started to run a cafe in a small town, but rather than live lavishly with champagne glasses, sparkling chandeliers, and dancing with anyone she pleased, she'd has think long and hard about a dingy cafe on the outskirts of the capital, where no one ventured, not even during the day. The clientele consisted of students, struggling writers, and girls seeking a spot to chat with friends. That's why there were only 3 tables, opening only after lunch and closing before nightfall. Emilia was the sole employee, and no matter how you looked at it, a cafe like that wouldn't bring in much money. She didn't want to draw attention. As a wealthy old woman, who owns a cafe, Emilia places a silver coin on the table. Emilia turned to Jack and warned him that greed never led to anything good. As the third son of a poor family, it was hard for him to afford food, but he frequented the cafe, ordering coffee. The protagonist remarked that the more a man shone on the outside, the darker his heart was. When lost and desperate, a fog clouded his vision, and he might regret not using his head. The man replied that he didn't understand what the lady was saying, but found her peculiar. If the boy realized she was odd, he should stop pestering her with pointless chatter. Well, the young man left it for the day, but he'd be back. Now that the customer was gone, it was time to prepare for closing. The vendor mentioned having fresh apples. Take a look at how beautiful they were. For 2 years, Emilia had lived as an ordinary citizen after leaving the mansion that morning. She had visited all the jewelry stores in the capital. Based on the coachman's suggestion, she visited a jeweler he was familiar with and inquired about the price of the jewelry she had brought. She then went to a reputable store to sell it. The girl was concerned that they would offer a low price because the saleswoman was young. Fortunately, she was able to sell the jewelry at a good price. The lady deposited some of the money in the bank and used the rest to purchase a small building. The ground floor of the building was spacious, while the second floor was for residential purposes. The lady liked that the house was located far from town and she could have a small garden. Instead of buying a more luxurious house, she preferred to live alone without hiring any servants. 2 girls passing by noticed that it seemed like a new business was going to open there. They commented that they wished it was a coffee shop. That seemed like a good idea, because now, coffee is popular. Although the protagonist ran the coffee shop just for fun and she doesn't have many customers, suddenly she remembers that there's the butter at home. Suddenly, people started talking about a kid that the wagon was heading towards. They were worried that the kid would be in danger. In that moment, Emilia dropped all her purchases and started yelling at the coachman to pull the reins and stop the horse. Unfortunately, he couldn't hear what the lady was saying. Emilia ran towards the girl and shielded her. Miraculously, the cart was able to go around them. Emilia immediately asked how the girl was doing, but she couldn't speak and started crying. The mother called out for Mary and wondered why the baby was crying. The lady explained that the carriage had suddenly moved, causing she to get a little scratched but without any major injuries. Emilia picked up her shopping goods and noticed that the apple had rolled quite far. However, the man arrived before her and asked what the lady was doing there. It was quite a surprising encounter. When their eyes met, Emilia immediately realized that this girl had come with him. In a hurry, Elodie decided to rent a public carriage. Thankfully, Emilia's quick thinking prevented any harm from coming to the child. Later, Elodie asked if she could know the name of the savior. Elodie Dienta, the protagonist of the game, was this woman. On the day Emilia wanted to leave the mansion, Ophelia's father felt that the decision was made too hastily, considering the recent funeral. Emilia responded to the Marquis, explaining that it wouldn't be wise to postpone these matters. She expressed her preference to leave either today or tomorrow. The Marquis inquired if she would meet the Marchioness before departing, but Emilia declined, fearing that it could worsen the situation. The protagonist acknowledged that it wasn't an easy moment for everyone and planned to leave discreetly so as not to bother anyone. She kindly requested that her departure be kept a secret, to which the Marquis agreed. Emilia's wish was respected, but the Marquis made it clear that she could change her mind at any time. This mansion was where she and Opilia had spent 10 years growing up. No one had the authority to force her to leave. Emilia had been bought by the Marquis from her parents, and their relationship was merely a transaction. She had only a drop of their blood in her veins. Emilia was not their daughter and could never replace Opilia, but sometimes even empty words can bring warmth to the heart. Emilia couldn't fill the void left by her dear friend's passing, as there was no one in the world who could replace her. She loved Opilia and cherished the house where Opilia once resided. However, that chapter had come to an end. With her precious friend gone, a piece of Emilia's soul had also departed. Before Ophelia's death, she had urged Emilia to live well, be happy, wear a long lace veil, and carry a bouquet of expensive flowers. Would the protagonist find happiness in marrying a young gentleman whom she had never met? It may not be clear, but if Emilia had stayed in the family, she wouldn't have been happy trying to take the place of her dear departed friend. Even if she did, it wouldn't work out. So it's better to let go of what can't be desired. She couldn't replace Opilia, because in the near future, there will be another girl like her. A girl who she doesn't know if she'll be happy or bitter like she is now. Elodie thanked Emilia. Elodie didn't have anything with her at the moment, but she wanted to show her gratitude. So she asked for Emilia's address to stay in touch. Emilia replied that it's okay and she didn't need to be repaid. However, Elodie insisted and asked her not to refuse. If she hadn't done it, the innocent child would have suffered greatly. But Emilia didn't want the reward. She also didn't want to get involved in such a complicated situation. Elodie questioned why it was a problematic matter, but at that moment, Rertis said they were already running late. If they arrived any later, the Countess wouldn't be happy. Emilia said it was fine and that Elodie should continue her journey. Elodie's face resembled Ophelia's, but their characters were so different that it was hard to notice the similarities. Rertis then asked why she wanted to be there in the first place. Emilia replied that she was a free person and could be wherever she wanted. She also mentioned that the Marquis mansion wasn't her home. There was an awkward silence between the two. Emilia told Rertis to leave, as he was being rude to the lady he was accompanying. And what about her? In his calm eyes, a hint of worry appeared, like the deep sea. In the past, she wanted to be the one who caused a storm in his eyes, but now she simply responded that Rertis and his companion were beautiful and seemingly very kind. She wondered when it became so easy to make Rertis nervous. Maybe he thought she would criticize him when she saw Elodie, who resembled Opilia so much. Emilia approached Rertis and informed him that he was not the type to abandon his companion without manners. Rertis attempted to interrupt her, but Emilia quickly clarified that she had no intention of judging him. Opilia had already passed away. After uttering these words, the coachman turned to Rertis and warned that they would be late if they didn't leave now. Rertis then turned to Emilia and assured her that they would talk later, referring to her as Leah, an abbreviation for Emilia and Opilia that Opilia had come up with when they were children. Emilia didn't particularly like the nickname, and as they grew older, they stopped using it. Emilia wondered why Rertis still called her that. Later, Elodie apologized to Rertis, acknowledging that her previous actions had put him in a bad mood. He responded that it wasn't the case and pondered what he had been thinking. He wanted to make an excuse for calling her Leah. Emilia couldn't recall returning home after the incident, but she knew she was exhausted. Opening her eyes, she realized it was late, and someone was already waiting for her to open the shop. She apologized for her tardiness, knowing that the person must have been waiting for a long time. Suddenly, Emilia was startled when she saw Cassio standing in front of her. It had been a while since they last saw each other, and he had been searching for Emilia for a long time, exploring every corner while she had been there all along. He addressed her as "lady," explaining that she always exceeded his expectations. Emilia requested that he not call her that anymore, as she didn't want to live like an aristocrat again. Cassio exclaimed that the people seemed familiar with her, causing Emilia to turn around, wondering what he had done. Cassio raised his hands and clarified that he wasn't trying to find out how she lived. He overheard the locals gossiping about her. They were discussing the lady who owned the quiet cafe in the alley. She had opened it out of passion, and despite only allowing those without money, her coffee business was thriving. She claimed it was because she didn't know much about running an interesting cafe. Cassio asked if he could ask something else. Why did Emilia leave? Emilia clarified that she hadn't run away, but had chosen to leave. He asked if someone at the mansion had told her to leave, but she insisted that no one had. Everyone had been kind and considerate to her. So why did she leave? Emilia placed the coffee and sandwich on the table and explained that she didn't know why Cassio was so interested in her departure. However, she had initially stayed at the Marquis house for Ophelia's sake. She simply wanted to leave and left early. Well, bon appetit to the gentleman. Emilia didn't think a man accustomed to high-status food would enjoy her cooking, but Cassio started eating and complimented her. Emilia replied that he didn't have to pay her compliments, but Cassio insisted he was telling the truth. He didn't believe Emilia would ever treat him. He then requested a 3-day-old rainwater brewed in tea, to which Emilia jokingly responded that he was talking about this and that, but he only wanted to talk about Opilia. Out of all Ophelia's admirers, Cassio was the one her friend hated the most: his appearance, seemingly natural goodness, and way of speaking. Opilia despised everything about him. When he arrived, Opilia was forced to meet him against her will, so she would torment him. Thanks to Emilia, he was no longer bullied, but if that's what Opilia wanted, Emilia would do it unconditionally. Cassio believed that all of Ophelia's actions were his fault, so he would apologize. However, it kept happening again and again. Cassio commented that it was exhausting to clean, prepare, open, close, and serve the customers. Emilia remarked that she had spent 8 long years taking care of a girl with the most repulsive personality imaginable. So, no, it wasn't tiring at all. She wondered if Cassio would have the audacity to say something offensive because she dared to criticize her deceased friend. Cassio's gaze was intense, but Emilia boldly stated that if he had something to say, he should speak up. He inquired if she would be coming of age this year, to which she asked if she looked so old that he had forgotten her age. He then questioned if she would consider having a coming-of-age ceremony. Taken aback, she asked him in a startled tone what he meant. He continued, explaining that the official events for debutantes would commence in May, and since it was now the beginning of March, they needed to start preparing. Confused, she asked Cassio what he was talking about. With a smile, Cassio added that he would be her escort for the debutante ball. He explained that a debut was an indication of a wealthy family, and most debutantes were between 18 and 22 years old, depending on individual circumstances. Debuting wasn't just about arriving at the ball in a beautiful dress, it also involved preparing the house where the debutante and her entourage would stay. This included rooms for overnight guests and changing rooms. However, the most challenging aspect was finding a suitable cavalier who would accompany the debutante throughout the evening and have the honor of being her first dance partner. This tradition originated from knights who bestowed honor upon the ladies they served. It was quite common for the debutante to eventually marry a cavalier of similar social status. Why is Cassio sharing this information with her? She has no clue. However, Emilia simply informed him that she had no intention of making her debut. Cassio assured her that if she was concerned about the preparations, she could relax as he would take care of everything, from the party to the guest room and dressing room. His family's wealth and abilities were well known to Emilia, but she politely declined. She was content with her current life and wanted to continue working at the cafe. Cassio had heard rumors that she even showed kindness to beggars, almost like charity. He questioned why she didn't choose to volunteer instead. Emilia explained that she used the alias Emily because Emilia sounded unfamiliar to the townspeople. It wasn't a completely new identity, just a slight alteration. Cassio remarked that it was typical of her nature. However, Emilia clarified that she had never intended to hide. He asked why she decided to run away silently, as if escaping. He mentioned the Countess but quickly stopped himself and asked her to forget it. She reminded him that he was the one who often made fun of her. Her relationship with the Marquis was delicate. How could a wealthy commoner make her debut? Cassio responded that even though she didn't like the idea, she should do it. If she participated in the social season this year, she wouldn't be bothered again. Emilia reiterated that she had no desire to live as a noble girl, so why should she debut? She already knew what people would say. She asked Cassio to leave. He reported that Opilia had left a letter for her. Specifically, it was about Emilia's introduction party. If Emilia considered him a gentleman, he would give her the letter. When the season ended, she called him a liar. Why would Opilia leave a letter for Cassio, whom she despised? It seemed impossible. Cassio observed to himself that the lady remained unaffected when he mentioned favors and other words, but when Opilia was brought up, she became emotional. She struggles to believe Cassio. Opilia despised him so much. However, could there be another reason for his generous offer to a girl he considered a nuisance? Emilia pondered for a moment and replied that if the man confirmed the letter's existence, she would comply with his request. However, she insisted that someone else had to vouch for her agreement. Emilia seemed to view him as untrustworthy and asked who should be her witness. She exclaimed, "Sir Edmund Gloucester, he will witness my agreement." In the game, the Baron's daughter showed the most interest in Edmund. However, he compelled her to change her name, and the Marquis family adopted her. Eventually, he married the unfortunate girl and locked her in a room filled with Ophelia's belongings. He believed that Ophelia's soul had transferred to the Baron's daughter's body. Cassio, of course, also made life difficult for the heroine but treated the Baron's daughter as a substitute. Instead of going mad, Cassio questioned why Edmund had to reach an agreement, as he was the most suitable candidate for the situation. Cassio did not anticipate her choosing him and was certain that Emilia would choose Rerdis. Emilia asked if he was bored because no one was being rude. Suddenly, he made a joke, and she repeated his line, causing him to burst into laughter. Regardless, he could confirm the letter's existence but couldn't show it to Edmund. If Emilia made her debut in May, the gentleman would send her a letter in return. She questioned whether he was being truthful, but by using the name Opilia, he made a sincere promise that she would believe. Despite seeing others as mere objects, he considered Opilia special and would never lie about anything concerning her. It was already the end of March, and Cassio realized they were behind on preparations. Emilia would have to stay in a different house, and she couldn't resist. She was determined to keep the promise she made to Cassio. Truth be told, Emilia asked for just one day. The coffee shop would have to close temporarily as Emilia wanted to inform the regular customers. Emilia truly intended to return there, as that place was her home. Just by closing her eyes, she could vividly remember her room shared with Opilia, the daily walks in the garden, and even the fountain where they played with their guests. Now, the Marquise's estate was nothing but a memory. Emilia expressed her wish that no rumors about the commoner Emily and Ophelia's friend would spread. Cassio assured her that his family would not allow gossip about a debutante. Emilia wondered why Opilia entrusted him with the letter and how Cassio managed to find her. Cassio explained that he had heard about an unpleasant incident and decided to investigate. He had heard mention of a young woman who resembled Emilia, and such coincidences were too rare to ignore. He felt it was necessary to thoroughly look into the matter. She realized that ever since he started searching for Emilia, it was because of Ophelia's letter. However, he didn't have the answer to her question. She approached him closely and asked. Due to the letter, Cassio turned around and admitted that he had been searching for the lady on his own, but had not found a single clue until yesterday, which wounded his pride. Emilia was at a loss for words, but did not bother to conceal it. She didn't believe they would find her, but thanks to Rerdis, Cassio found the one he was looking for. Cassio asked if she intended to hide the fact that she was about to make her debut. She clarified that she had left and no longer had any ties to the Marquis family, and Rerdis would be accompanied by a suitable woman. Emilia was no longer concerned. Cassio then inquired if Rerdis had decided not to accompany anyone, to which she clutched her skirt and declared it was his choice. Emilia turned to Cassio and informed him that he seemed to have misunderstood something. There was no need to perceive her feelings as a weakness. She explained that she was making her debut against her will. Is it inappropriate to discuss another man's partner behind his back? She spoke as if she had no regrets, with a hint of anger, questioning if he expected her to be envious and cling to false hope. Cassio apologized, not fully comprehending why he had said what he did. He acknowledged his mistake and sincerely apologized. He asked if Emilia would forgive him, then kissed her hand. She blushed and requested her hand back, mentioning she had never received such attention from a handsome man before. Cassio promised to seek her approval next time before taking any action, and then took his leave, promising to be cautious of his precious companion's delicate heart. He assured her he would return soon to pick her up. Cassio did not delay, closing the cafe late that night to inform regular customers of the upcoming closure for a while, before tidying up the cafe. The woman gathered her belongings and allowed herself to briefly close her eyes. However, Cassio abruptly pulled her out of the house because it was time for them to depart. She wondered why it hadn't dawned yet, considering how early they had arrived. As Raritas reached the cafe, he knocked on the door, only to be informed by Jack that it was temporarily closed. Raritas inquired if the man worked there, but Jack clarified that he was just a regular customer. Jack explained that he had been informed yesterday that the cafe would be closed for a few months. Jack couldn't help but admire the young man's exceptional beauty, surpassing even the finest actors.